Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Words for Life, the podcast where we look to quotes, ideas, phrases, and people to help inspire and motivate us. Today with us, we have Alia. Thank you for joining us today, Alia.
Pleasure to be here, Stephen.
Yes. So we are excited to introduce her. She brings a wealth of expertise in psychology, psychotherapy, and coaching. After completing her training in Performance Coach University, Alia embarked on her journey as a mindset coach. We'll get into that a little bit more as we go forward. She works with individuals looking to redefine their reality, which led to the creation of her coaching business, Finding Your True Reality, or FYTR, pronounced fighter. Alia's work focuses on helping her clients gain clarity on what truly matters to them. She ensures their actions align with their values and purpose, guiding them to leverage the power of their mindset to design the life that they desire. Thrilled to have you here, Alia, today, and thank you
Your
very
pleasure.
much for taking the time to let me interview you.
Of course, I'm really excited to be doing this with you, Stephen. I really appreciate what you do with this podcast. I think it brings a lot of value to your audience, so it's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, let's go ahead and get right into it. What drove you to go into coaching? You've got psychology, psychotherapy. What brought you here?
Yeah, so with coaching, it just really aligns with my values, my morals, and my purpose. I feel very fortunate to have found my calling so early on, and I'm very grateful to do my passion for work. So I see mental health kind of on a spectrum, and I'm very fascinated by both polars and everything in between on that spectrum. And I find that you can apply coaching to a very wide extent on that spectrum. But what fascinated me the most with coaching was specifically two things. So the first thing is that it's a framework that looks at adding positive elements rather than focusing solely on the negative or fixing the negative, which standard psychology does, right? And this really came from, so I did my bachelor's degree in psychology, and I'm doing this degree and I'm loving it and everything, but I'm finding myself with a lack. There was a lack of positivity. Everything was focused on either mental illness or mental disorders or symptomology, pathology, all of this stuff. And I thought, well, where's the good stuff? How do we learn how to flourish? How do we learn how to grow, to develop, to live purposeful lives? And so that's where coaching really came in as a solution. I actually took a module in my bachelor's degree that was coaching, and that's where I was introduced to it. And I did a framework integrating coaching with psychology with a focus specifically on a non-clinical population, um, which was very much drawing on positive psychology. And interestingly, that's the module that I did the best on. So yeah, so that's number one. Number two is really prevention rather than cure. So again, for me, it's like, why wait until we're depressed or anxious or burnt out to elevate our mental states and our lives? It's like with exercise, for example, right? A lot of us exercise to prevent disease or to prevent illness. So, and the beauty of it is that there's a byproduct of, okay, I'm getting fit and I look nice and I feel good, right? So we'd rather do the work to prevent being sick than and then work our way back to baseline than like it's a very simple way to kind of just go upwards from baseline. And so the same thing happens with coaching. You take someone from baseline and you shoot them to the moon, you know. I really believe we have the power, that the power lies within our minds to be proactive about what we want to accept as our own reality. And if we're not satisfied with that reality, we can create that reality. And I think that that's what creates the foundation for my business as well.
That's wonderful. And this is really, really good point. And we said this on a few other interviews for the audiences, but the difference between coaching and therapy, coaching is, like you said, it's kind of curing the depression, it's curing the anxiety, it's curing something that's out there, a clinical diagnosis that is diagnosed for that individual, versus coaching is taking from that baseline or maybe a little less than baseline and then moving forward, making progress in a, I love how you say it, a positive direction, because a lot of psychotherapy and psychology and therapy in general is trying to get someone to a baseline. And
Right.
it feels like, well, you're just working through all these negatives, and it can be daunting to deal with that from a regular basis, but getting somebody to baseline, it's important, definitely necessary, absolutely valuable in those areas.
Oh,
But
absolutely. Yeah.
then people stop there, and this is where coaching really comes in and can drive people forward. I love how you have fighter
Absolutely.
for your business name, because in life so many things get thrown at us and really challenge us that you kind of got to fight for it. You have to go and prove that you want this in your life, and a coach can really help hold you accountable, drive you in those areas, and help
Because
you remember your mindset whenever it does come to play.
yeah. And I think something important to note there as well, that I speak with a lot of people about, a lot of clients as well, is that therapy and coaching are not a substitute for each other. They focus on entirely different things. So that's where it was kind of like a gap in the field, that, and it was like coaching was like a solution to a problem that I saw in the field. So to answer your question, that's why I'm here now.
Well, that's promising, and a great background for what brought you there. And I think that can really, just what you said, they're not substitutes for each other. It is a next step or a difference in that area, which, and you said it is about what you think and your mindset, which does actually play into the quote you have for us today. So if you are ready, I'd like you to dive right into that.
Yeah. So my favorite quote right now, it kind of changes with the phases of my life, but right now it is, your life is as good as your mindset. I coach by this quote. I live by this quote. I myself am a living, breathing example of this quote, because when I'm not living by it, I see it manifest in every single area of my life and every part of myself. So your mindset is really what gives meaning to your life, right? To everything in your life. And very simply put, it's the lens we put on and we see the world through. And if you can't change your circumstances, you can change your perception of your circumstances. And that equals to a completely different lived experience, right? So it's like, it's a tool to experiencing life in a different way. And an example I like to use is traffic. So that's to a very large extent a circumstance that we can't change. I mean, you could wake up early and get out of the house, but let's say for argument's sake, that it's a circumstance you can't change. The mindset here is often, oh crap, I have to sit through traffic every day and this sucks, and I hate traffic, and it's a waste of my time. So here, given that we can't change the mindset, we can change our perception. So we could very simply, by using language, and these are tools that we use a lot in coaching, right? We could shift that to, okay, you know what? I now get an extra 30 minutes to either educate myself by listening to a podcast, or to refuel myself and recharge myself by listening to some music, or I could replenish myself by sitting in silence, or I could connect with a friend. It could be anything. It's really limitless if you want it to be, right? And so what often happens is, when we acquire a mindset like scenario one, the mindset, or the thoughts behind that mindset become a habit, and then we start to see the world around us with those lenses on, because our brains begin to search for information similar to that, because our brains want to align with the beliefs that we're feeding them. Yeah. So with the traffic, what started with traffic, because we didn't put a stop to it. We just allow that thought to continue every single morning when we get in the car. It all of a sudden develops into, okay, I have to sit through traffic and waste my time. And then you get to work and you see your coworker, I don't know, grab the last bit of coffee or the last croissant, and now you're mad at her. And then you have to go work on some report that you really despise, and then something goes wrong, and now you hate your job, and now you hate your life. So that just becomes a really, really sad cascade of negativity, because at some point you allowed your thoughts and your mindset to become a mood. And I can't remember where I read this or learned this, if it was a podcast or in one of my trainings, but with a persistent mood, comes a persistent temperament. And with a
Mm-hmm.
persistent temperament comes a personality. And then that just becomes the reality that you live in. So your mindset, the way you think, the way you perceive the world around you, your perceived reality, can be controlled by the conscious part of your mind. So the scenario that we just spoke about, that was our subconscious mind speaking, because it was a program that we have now allowed to become habitual, that have now taken a seat in our subconscious mind. And when you haven't done the work and you're not aware of this, and you're living with an unintentional mindset, the one that you didn't choose, your subconscious mind begins to run you. And the thing is here that we can actually consciously take control and shift our mindset. So this links back to the positivity of the quote. We can do this by doing the work. And that looks like recognizing the programs, asking ourselves questions. How do I make sense of the world around me? How do I respond and react to things around me? And then we tell our conscious minds to take the executive seat, to take control. And that means making conscious decisions, setting conscious intentions, and consciously shifting our state. And you know as well that we can do this with a limitless amount of tools, right? So the moral of the story, or the quote here, if you will, is that you can, just as well as you can think yourself into a bad mood, you can think yourself into a good mood. And it's something that I feel very passionately about. It sucks that a lot of the time people are a lot better at thinking themselves into a really bad mood. But the good news is, when you've done it enough, when you let your conscious mind take the executive seat enough times, and that becomes habitual, with enough repetition and reflection and awareness and asking yourself the right questions and reflecting and all of this, thinking yourself into a good mood can actually become subconscious as well. So then that happens automatically. So once you consciously decide that you want to grow, you want to change your circumstances or your perception of your circumstances, you can update your habitual thinking and your mindset and make your subconscious mindset a positive one. So you change the color of those lenses, right? And then you begin to see the world through brighter eyes. That makes room for flow and engagement and love and purpose and play. And I think that's why your life is as good as your mindset.
And that's a perfect transition into that quote: is your life is as good as your mindset. You mentioned the glasses and the lenses you look through. I often refer to it as rose-colored glasses, right?
Exactly.
You have a choice on which glasses you put on, right? And that is one of the most powerful things we have as human, is choice. Yeah, our subconscious mind is running constantly in the back of our head. There's, I was actually at a silent meditation retreat where we're talking to one of the monks there, and he says, humans have 60,000 stories they tell themselves every day, and they have 300,000 emotions that they go through every day. However, you don't always act on those emotions. You don't always let those come up to the conscious part of your brain, and that's where we have the control. But as you said, you have to go sit in that executive seat. You got to be in the driver's seat. I almost equate it to, like, there's some people you see that go and they'll go turn their Tesla on, and you've heard stories in the news where they'll go sit in the passenger seat and they'll do something. It's like you're no longer in that seat paying attention. Yeah, there's things in our life as habits and things that we have developed that allow us to drive. Most people, when they drive, they don't pay attention to every single thing that's going on. They're paying attention to
autopilot. That's the simplest example of explaining how the subconscious mind works, right? It's just you're just going. Sometimes we don't even know how we ended up in certain places.
Right, exactly. And that's where having that control and really stepping in and making the conscious decision about whether you want to let that subconscious behavior continue. So you mentioned habits, and it is a habit. It is a habit of establishing a positive frame of mind. And you can do this from the moment you wake up in the morning. I think it was a book I had read, and I want to say it was either from Mel Robbins or something along those lines. But if you wake up and stub your toe in the morning, that has the possibility to set the tone for the rest of your day.
Absolutely.
But that's a choice, right? That is a choice. You can be like, oh, that hurts. Moving on, go from there. Or you can say, like, that hurts. Oh, now I've spilt my coffee. Now it's just going to continue throughout the rest of my day.
But you
do. Yes, exactly. It's that spiral that can continue, and being able to go into your conscious thought, and it's a practice. It's not going to kick off immediately, especially as you said, people are so used to thinking the negatives and putting themselves in the negative perspective. I stubbed my toe, I spilled my coffee, late for work, kids weren't ready. You can just keep going and going and going, or you can go, oh, stubbed my toe, maybe I should move my desk a little bit over to the right. Great, I've made a conscious choice about that for the next time. Now,
Yeah.
hey, coffee spilled, okay, no big deal. You have that choice. It is your perception. One of the quotes that I use is, and this goes back to the whole coworker thing too, is that when two people's realities meet is where communication occurs. And you have to identify what your reality is. If your reality that you create for yourself is always in that negative mindset, when you
Mm-hmm.
go and communicate with someone, even if you have positive intention, that's what frames those conversations, which then
Yeah.
goes into a bigger aspect of overall conversations, relationships, and everything else. So mindset permeates into all aspects of life.
Everything. It's our first line of doing anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
I really believe so. Our brains signal our body to move and to do and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that our minds signal our brains to do that. And it's something that I find very interesting because you can bring it back to spirituality, religion, whatever you want. It's very hard to place the mind in the brain. Like psychology
Mm-hmm.
and certain studies will tell you some things, and then there are theories here and there and whatever. But I really feel like that's something that you can't exactly pinpoint. And so that's what it this is what the executive functioning is, you know what I mean? And that's where we need
Mm-hmm.
to take control. We dictate our mind. And this is where I
Absolutely.
think what we do comes in and helps with, because a lot of people, I've been in that place as well, it's not easy to do. We're
Mm-hmm.
talking about it like it's a piece of cake, right? But it does take doing the work to get there. And often that means guidance, very simply. And that's where, the work needs to be done. And that's where we kind of come in and we kind of hold our clients' hands and we walk through this process with them.
Yeah. And that's the accountability aspect of coaching. Like therapy, you're talking, you're doing a lot of that work in there. Accountability is like, okay, you've gotten an idea, the person comes with the idea, they have a decision on a goal they want to achieve, and then the coach comes in and be like, all right, we're going to hold you accountable to that. How many times did you
Mm.
say the word should this week? Okay, cut that in half. Hold yourself accountable and make progress, because yeah, it's not going to happen tomorrow. And especially, you have bad days and good days. There's times where you're like, yep, I was positive all day, things went well. The next day you can stub your toe, and that sets the tone. And then, hey, you know what, you recognize. So it goes back to recognizing what caused that and be like, okay, can I adjust that for next time? But it takes that conscious effort.
Mm.
If you're just continuing to run on autopilot, you're not going to be better. And it takes a conscious effort to choose to have that goal of wanting to have a more positive outlook on life, for wanting to have a better life or a more desired life, as yours goes into, and really improving yourself. People go through on autopilot their entire lives, and then they wonder
Yes,
why they're stressed, unhealthy, and
exactly.
don't have great relationships. It's like, because you have to be conscious about what you do, develop the habits, and then go seek out coaches like yourself and me to go and help you be accountable, work in specific areas, develop and learn those tools that are going to work for us for that person.
Exactly. It's all about living intentionally, and not enough people do it. And
Absolutely.
it's really, it's something that I think all coaches or anything really in the mental health space, in the well-being space, in the level up space feel passionately about. It's like it's out there for all of us, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can do it. You just need the resources for it, which is knowing that you have the power to. Once you have the power to, it's just about starting.
Absolutely. And that's really kind of where that coaching comes in. Some people, it is an investment. Coaching is not, it's not something, that's cheap per se, but it's an investment in yourself. And a lot of people, they go, oh, I don't need a coach. It's like, great. Now, how many self-help books do you have sitting on your bookshelf that you haven't read or haven't done anything
That
with?
knowing doing gap, that just endless loop, right? But then
Exactly. So
it's things like this as well, like this podcast, where some people, I mean, that's how my journey started. I can't remember now what it was, but you hear that one thing or that one something positively triggers you, so
mhm,
that's as well why I applaud you for holding this space, and get, kind of like lending a hand out to the public to pick up on whatever. Everything is with is about what you take from it, right? So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, to kind of our audiences out there, so the quote is, "Your life is as good as your mindset." And if you were to tell, those listening to the podcast what they can do with this, what would you say they can do with this quote?
I think the first and the most important thing is to make a choice to live intentionally. To ask yourself, is the life that I'm living right now one that I've chosen? If the answer to that is no, okay. Are my circumstances in my control, or are they with outside my control? And then focus on the things you can either go and you can focus on the things that are within your control, and you can do with that, you can actionize that, right? Sometimes you live a life where a lot of things are out of your control, and your circumstances
Hmm.
just mean that, okay, this is just how it is. Then it's a matter of, okay, now how can I take this and perceive it differently? How can I reframe this? And I think the simpler way to do it is to break it down into really little parts. And that's why I use the
Hmm.
traffic as an example. Obviously, it feels very daunting for a lot of people to think of a very, very negative circumstance and like, okay, but how, Alia, how can I make this into something positive, right? It's not even into something positive. It's just a matter of retrieving something out of that you can intentionally shift into something you can make use of, right? So let's take I don't know, any other example. My hair isn't growing. I'm getting really frustrated that my hair has just plateaued at this length. Okay, that's something that's to an extent in my control, but let's say it's out of my control, it's genetics. Okay, how can I rephrase that? How can I reframe the way I think about that? I can tell myself, you know what? Short hair means that I can go to the gym and not be all clogged up and clustered and whatnot. And I can, so you know what I mean? It's about taking what you have and rephrasing it and reframing it in a way that it fits your life.
Hmm.
And actually, I
Hmm.
want to add to that as well. First and foremost, before all of that, decide what it is that you want in your life. What is the purpose? What is the intentions? So I do one thing where in the morning I wake up and then I decide, okay, how do I intend on feeling today? What do I
Hmm.
intend on embodying? Because your thoughts are really powerful and they can create a lot in your lived experience. So if I tell myself, okay, today I want to feel grateful, all of a sudden, and I keep that in mind throughout the day consciously, it takes effort, but consciously,
Hmm.
then I start seeing and signs of gratitude everywhere. And it's just like, okay, my husband might have said to me, okay, have a great day. I will take that as if he's just blessed me with, you know what I mean? Like because I'm wearing gratitude lenses, that's all I see today,
Hmm.
and there might be someone on the road that's honking at me or something, and that doesn't align with my lens, so it doesn't matter. I'm busy with my
Hmm.
gratitude today. Yeah. So that's what I would say to do.
Then that's wonderful. And actually, that's a perfect thing that our listeners can really take away from this is like setting the intention the first thing you wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
And it's like the idea that so when people are going and looking for a new car, and they're like, oh, I want a blue Ford Mustang. Okay. Suddenly you start seeing blue Ford Mustangs everywhere. It's
Everywhere.
because, exactly. So that's the idea is that when you go set an intention, you set your mindset towards an end goal. And that's important. If you don't know, like, okay, so you're going to drive from, here in the US, you're going to drive from Colorado to New York.
Mm.
Well, great. But if you didn't know you were starting at Colorado, you just say, okay, I'm going to drive to New York. Then it's like, well, how do you get there? You don't know. So you really need to know how to start. So you're starting with gratitude, Colorado, and you're going to drive to amazing gratitude, which is New York. All right. Well, now you know where you're going, how you're going to get there.
Yeah, exactly. On the days where I forget to do this, I can feel it. So that's what I meant by like I'm a
Mm.
living example of when I'm not doing it, it affects all the areas of my life. So that's definitely one thing I tell the audience to try tomorrow. This is something you can do. I mean, for you, it's morning, isn't it?
Uh, yeah, relatively. Yeah,
Yeah. Then try it now. You know.
exactly.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So for those of you listening, you know, your mindset is extremely important. It is extremely powerful. And by setting yourself up for success, start with your intention. Understand what you want to do for the day. If you want to be, I want to be healthier today, you will probably see more instances of opportunities to be healthier. If you say, I want to be grateful for what's going around me, shoot, even write it down. Go in the morning, have yourself a little journal like, I'm going to be grateful today. That can help set that tone and keep it in your mind as you're going forward. So for those of you listening, remember, your life is as good as your mindset. Really keep that in mind. The mind is extremely powerful, and start your day off with intention. Well, yeah, I want to thank you very much for being on our podcast today and really giving us a lot of insight into mindfulness and being aware of the mindset and how important that is in living our daily lives.
Thank you so much for having me, Stephen. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody, remember, your life is only as good as your mindset. Live with intention and have a wonderful rest of the day.